Welcome back to the 7-part series of how to financially prepare to buy your home. Today, I'm going to drop 8 tips on how to save when you're getting ready for this big purchase. Lock in. Let's go.
How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time homebuyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers.
What is happening? How to Buy a Homies. Still me, still David Sidoni, a 20-year first-time homebuyer specialist and coach for first-time homebuyers all across North America, here to offer you guidance, coaching, and today, some very practical tips for your financial planning when you're getting ready to buy that first home. So far, we've covered automating your savings, building up your reserves, and budgeting apps. Today, we're going to move into multiple tips for savings, and I'm going to start with tip number 4, working on your credit score. I know, I'm sorry, but you just can't fight it. Your credit score matters. And putting this off, it's going to cost you. I don't care if you're hoping to buy your first home in 6 weeks, 6 months, or a year or two. This is one of your very first steps. And I mean before you do any research on anything else. I don't care if you're looking at other stuff about your finances, and especially don't go dream scrolling on Zillow if you haven't put action steps in place for your credit score, because there's only one thing that improves your credit score: time. That's why it's at the top of your list, no matter what your time frame is. More time you work on it, the better your score, better loan products, better fees, lower stuff that you have to pay. And this takes time, so get started. Now, the full details on how to do that with all the action steps that you can take immediately, that's in episode 503. That's step 3 of the ultimate 10-step guide. And today, I'll just drop a few quick reminders for you. This one's interesting because it's a 2026 reminder. On April 22nd, FHFA and HUD, they both approved 2 new credit scoring models, the Vantage Score 4.0 and FICO 10T. Now, I don't know if that means anything to you, but those are new. We've been using different classic FICO scores in the past. The Vantage 4.0 score, it can score roughly 33 million more Americans than the old system because it finally counts things like your on-time rent payments and utility payments. And here's a big bonus that comes with this. Using these new scores, this is one place you can actually get back some time, because both of those new models, they use what's called a 24-month trended data. That means they don't just take a snapshot of where you're at today. They're actually going to look at how you've been trending for the last 2 years. If you've been paying down debt, paying your rent on time, finally, you're going to get credit for that. Not just the total of your debt. And finally, your rent is going to count for something. So you've got 2 action steps. Number 1, look into a rent reporting service now. Yeah, your scores might eventually get this stuff, but you want to go ahead and get that stuff reported to all the credit bureaus immediately. And that way, that history, it exists in the system and it'll be there when you're ready to go out and buy a home. Number 2, when you talk to home mortgage professionals about getting your plan together and building your strategy for your first home, straight up just ask them, hey, what scoring model do you pull from? Because the adoption of these new scoring systems, it's uneven across the country. Not everyone's doing it. A lot of people are still using the classic FICO score, but there's a growing chunk starting to use Vantage Score 4.0 and the FICO 10T. So ask them and say, hey, is this going to be a better opportunity for me? Now, when it comes to your credit score, I can't say it any different than this. It just needs immediate attention. I don't care if your credit score's 420 or an 815. When you're buying a home, there's so much that you need to understand about how your credit score can affect your buying power. And it's different than your credit score for anything else, for getting a car loan or a credit card. It's different. And the fees that you pay when you're buying your home, or in fact, the type of loan programs that you get, I mean, that could change just by your credit score. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And if you're buying a home with a partner, here's a little sobering news. They're not looking at the average. They take the lowest score. So get your partner working on their credit score, or I don't know, cut them loose. No, I'm just kidding. Know this stuff early. It takes time. Jump on this ASAP. When it comes to financially preparing to buy your home, the credit tip, working on your credit score, that's one that you should start no matter how far out you are. In fact, if you're here right now with me in your ear holes, you're ready to work on your credit score, because fixing credit, time. for everybody. 400, 800. I've interviewed multiple credit card specialists, and they all told me this shocking fact. Almost every credit report that they look at, and they look at hundreds of them every day, they all have mistakes on them. And most people, they don't have any idea about that. Here's where it gets even funkier. Guess what I'm going to say again? Time. Because correcting mistakes, even if they're completely wrong, which happens all the time, where they just have it's a name mix up and you've got some canceled credit card for some other David Sidoni. Getting that fixed, it takes time. So if you don't know what's out there and you're getting ready to go out and buy a home, that one little mistake could be the difference between you getting the home loan and the fees that you want or you overpaying. And you know what? I understand working on your credit score, it's not exactly the dopamine hit you were hoping for in your fun journey to becoming a homeowner. But this is how you get ahead. Like people who tell great stories, most of the time they're the people who did this. Episode 503 has everything you need on credit scores. Okay, that's the first 4 tips. And I got to tell you, those first 4 tips, they are pretty much non-negotiable if you want to have a winning strategy in buying a home. You got to automate your savings, make sure you have some reserves, get yourself a budget. I don't care if it's with an app or on paper, and work on your credit score. That is all free advice that's going to put you way ahead of everyone else. Don't spend another second researching homes or neighborhoods or loans or interest rates, not until you have all 4 of those started, because they take time to get better. And you're losing time just listening to me right now if you haven't started all 4 of those things. And this is just free advice coming from me, because in case you didn't notice, this podcast isn't just free to you, it's also sponsor free. So you're not getting any crap, no advertisers, no one paying me to sell you garbage. This is totally unbiased insider information because I want first-time homebuyers to get the education they deserve. So take that action so that you can get what so many other people miss out on. These are things that are going to help you benefit. Doing this stacks the deck for you. You'll have choices that other aspiring first-time homebuyers just wish they could have. Once you've done those 4 steps, then you can stack the rest of these tips into your financial planning. And the next tip is tip number 5, which is checking your interest rates. Now, I'm not talking about a mortgage interest rate. I'm talking about the interest rate you're paying on your loans. So you can check your interest rates on different things: credit cards, savings accounts, car loans, student loans, everything. Go through every account and check the rate. And then ask yourself this: can you do better? And listen, this matters more right now than in recent history, because as of 2026, looked at a few different analysis on this and data points. Credit cards, they're saying that the average interest rate now is at a record high, anyone from 21.4% all the way up to like 23.5%. 22.8% was about the average that I found. 22.8%. I mean, looking back, as early as 2019 and 2020, those rates were around 15 to 16%. So that means right now, debt is more expensive than it's ever been. Oh my God, another roadblock that you have to overcome, which means you got to put in a little work. And attacking this, it's more valuable than ever. So if you've been making full payments or on-time payments or keeping everything like it's supposed to be with your credit card, call up your credit card company and ask them for a lower rate. And I want to set a real expectation for you guys. The most recent surveys only show about 18% of the people who ask for their rate can actually get it lowered. Now, I think that's so low just because the people who are asking are desperate. Someone like you who's listening who hasn't even thought about that, if you're not desperate, you've just been doing everything right, you probably have a better chance than 18%. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, but it is free to ask and it costs you nothing but a phone call. And if they say no, you can call back and ask again later. Now, here's a pro move on that. If you can figure out how to do this by getting a soft credit pull, you can go out and look for a lower rate interest card and double check to make sure they're doing a soft credit pull so there's no hit on your credit, and ask them for an offer. What percentage would you give me on my interest rate? And now you use that offer as leverage with your current credit card people. Hey, I just got an interest rate for 12%. From, Citi, Capital, American Express, whatever. Can you match that? And then this is an important part. No, do not do this online. I know that there's a lot of people that say this generation doesn't love the phone. I actually know that there are some colleges right now that are literally offering classes to students on how to call and talk to customer service. And I get it. Automation is convenient. By the way, I've been reading a bunch of articles right now about individual pricing based on who you are and where you are. They're using AI to get your data, and they're charging people different things for the exact same product. So yeah, maybe that automation isn't as handy as you think it is. But I digress. Let's go back to buying a home. When you get in this process, it's going to be the biggest thing you've ever done in your life, and it takes a lot of voice-to-voice communication, especially if you want to secure a great deal, because buying a home, it's a little bigger production than just clicking something off Amazon. So this is my advice to you. Go ahead, do whatever it takes. Have a cocktail, shotgun a beer before you call. If you want to, film yourself. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? It goes totally sideways, and then you post it online and go viral and become famous. But don't worry, it won't be that difficult, and it won't be a train wreck. All you got to do is get yourself psyched up thinking about how much quicker you can leave your crappy landlord in the dust and be a homeowner and have control over your life. So make the calls to your credit cards, ask for lowest interest rates. Go get it. Now, auto loans are different. Usually getting a lower auto loan interest rate means that you're refinancing the remaining whatever's left on the loan. And for that one, there is no one-size-fits-all hack because your car situation is unique to you, and maybe you've got some sort of connection with credit unions or your bank. But this is also a possibility because if you refinance a car loan, then you're going to be getting a lower debt-to-income ratio. But here's the best tip with this whole thing. If you got a little extra chunk of money, before you make an extra payment or pay the whole thing off because you're thinking, oh, it's just interest rates are too high. Whatever you do in the saving process, when you have your money, put your money into savings first. Because when you get a home loan, banks are not looking at your total debt. They're looking at your monthly obligations versus how much monthly payment you could afford in a new mortgage. The debt to income ratio, I describe it in other episodes in the 10 steps. And the deal is cash is always king. So if you come into an extra $5,000 and you think you're going to pay off your car, don't do that right away without checking with your real estate team, because ironically, that could be the wrong move. You think, well, how is lowering the payment the wrong move? Well, maybe you've qualified for a home or could qualify for a home loan with that small car loan or medium-sized car loan still on the books for you. But now what you've done is you've paid it off. And so, hey, you're approved for more loan, but you've drained $5,000 from your savings account that maybe you didn't have to spend. Auto loans are what we call installment loans. Now, that's opposed to your credit cards, which are revolving debt. Installment loans lenders like because they can calculate when the end date's coming. And here's an insider tip about car loans. Most borrowers who are looking to get a home loan, if your car loan is 10 months or less, most of the time that payment is not even going to count on your debt to income ratio because it has an end date, which means you can get loan approval still keeping that payment on your monthly balance sheet, but you're also going to be able to keep the cash without having to pay it off. So that's another reason to check with with all of your professionals before you reduce your debt when you get a big pile of cash. I know, sounds a little convoluted, confusing, confounding. Yeah, it is. It's a balancing act of debt and savings. That's all in episode, 504 and 505. Now, on the flip side, with auto loans, if you're a year or two out from buying a home and you decide to go out and buy some dope-ass ride with a $900 payment or a $1,200 payment, let me put it this way, $900, a payment that goes out, that's worth about $125,000 of home loan that you could be approved for. So you got a dope new car, but you just lost $125,000 in your loan approval. And it's actually worse than that $900 payment because the reality is it's not just a $900 payment. AAA says that the all-in cost for a vehicle with a $900 payment is $11,500 a year, about $965 a month. Once you add in the depreciation, the insurance, and everything else, depreciation alone is going to eat over $4,000 a year. So that shiny new car isn't just a car payment. It's a wealth-destroying machine right when you're trying to build your wealth with your home purchase. And that actually gets me to another side note tip. This one's pretty crucial. Once buying a home becomes your goal because you understand the rent replacement strategy is the fastest way to make your money work for you, While you're saving for a home, every big financial decision is dictated by that goal. So before you make any big money moves, I'm talking about traveling, buying furniture, any kind of weird new extra purchases, maybe even a big computer or something like that, ask your professional first if that purchase can work into your plan, if it's going to maximize your options as a homeowner. Check on every single thing. Buying a car, new credit cards, refinancing your student loans. Don't do any of that without talking to your unicorn lender. I've watched people 6 months to 12 months out make what they think is just a normal, reasonable financial decision on their own without checking with their professional on the ramifications of it. And they actually delayed their home purchase by 3 months, sometimes 6 months, sometimes a year. Tip number 6. Now, how do you handle big chunks of cash to your advantage? This tip goes with the warning that I just gave you about checking with your pro for a financial move, because buying a home is different than anything else that you've ever done. You can't use generic financial advice, including what happens if you get a big chunk of money for your birthday or a work bonus or something for so maybe you got something at holiday times or wedding money or tax refunds, which is really interesting because right now in 2026, the average tax refund came in at $3,462, which was up 11% from last year, thanks to the new tax laws. So I might be too late for some of you. Maybe you already spent it, but maybe you can use this for 2027. Using the refunds and gifts to add to your savings, because that's going to be a real turbo boost to your savings. And who knows, that might even knock a year or two off your timeline. So with these big chunks, before you do something to pay off a nagging debt, that one credit card you just keep looking at every month just pisses you off, hold on, we have bigger fish to fry. Check with your real estate team on how to best use that cash. You want to adjust your finances and your balance sheet in the eyes of a mortgage lender. I know it feels logical to pay down debt when you got that tax refund or bonus or gift money, but the best home loan approval might come from you splitting the money across multiple different buckets. Some debt here, and some savings built up there. So check with your unicorn lender first. And here's another specific tip about this. If you are in the lucky, privileged situation where you're getting a gift, you're getting money given to you, the banks need a paper trail on that money. I know this is going to sound a little paranoid and intense, but it's the reality. Check with your lender before you even deposit gift money if someone is old school and writes you a check. I mean, you can cash grandma's $25 birthday check, but if you get a $2,500 gift, it has to be sourced. And sometimes the giver of the gift even has to write a letter proving that it's Nana's money and that you're not a terrorist. I wish I was making that up, but that's the reality behind these rules. And they exist and they blow up deals if you don't know what you're doing. Here's a couple of 2026 details. The IRS is letting people do up to $19,000 this year. A couple can gift you $38,000 combined before there's any gift tax paperwork on their end. And that's exactly why you loop in your lender early, because one of the other things is that gift money has been sitting in your account for more than 60 days or more. Generally, most of the time, that's considered seasoned. And the sourcing, it's a little less stringent. But I see it all the time where someone would deposit without a gift letter 3 to 4 weeks before they're getting ready to buy a home. But they think, well, that money's been there 3 or 4 weeks. It's fine. Suddenly they find their dream home before they, that 60 days or 90 days. And then they have to scramble like mad to get their loan approved because that gift fund, it's not properly sourced and not counted in the overall loan approval. This whole getting a home mortgage, it's a game of timing and paperwork. And your unicorn lender, they play it for a living. I swear, a lot of times the tips that I'm giving people is just like, do this to avoid drama. That's all it is. It's not like, do this to get a great deal or do this to save $10,000. Nope. Do this to avoid stress, drama. Okay, tip number 7. Now, I'm going to drop this early in all the tips because I want to get your mind working outside the box. We're talking about house hacking. Now, I have some time-tested house hacking tips that work really well. And before I get to those, I want to address something that has gone completely mainstream in the last few years, or at least it seems that way. I read about it everywhere. Co-buying. People are like, hell, I can't afford this on my own. So I'm going to buy a home with a buddy. Two people, not in a partnership, both deciding to buy a home and go on title. Sometimes people are doing it with their friends. Sometimes people are doing it with their siblings. This used to be a fringe hack, but it's getting more mainstream. 31.5% of U.S. home purchases now involve co-buyers. Now, of course, that probably means a lot of partners that aren't married, but they're partners. But, we're still at 64 million Americans co-own a home with someone that they're not married to, but there are other people that are doing it with friends and buddies. It's exploding because splitting the buy-in and the monthly payment, that makes homes more affordable for people who just don't think they can do it solo. So now there's a but. This is a big but. Here's the stat that proves my whole do this with a pro, not some advice on Reddit point. Friend groups make up 61% of the people who plan to co-buy, but only 46% of them end up co-owning. 15% difference there. Why? Because buddies get excited about the idea, but they don't handle the operational, legal, boring stuff to do it. And friends, you don't get the automatic legal protection that married couples do. So co-buying is not as easy as people think it is, and there are major legal ramifications. So if you're going to co-buy, you need a specialized team with a written co-ownership agreement spelling out who pays what happens if someone wants out, and everything to do with the finances about something that you don't know today because that's going to happen sometime in the future. So if you co-buy on a handshake, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So while I admire their ambition for co-buyers trying to do this, I put this in the category of people saying, hey, can I buy a home with a 580 credit score? Well, technically you can, but should you? I mean, just like technically you and a buddy could co-buy a home, but should you? Like if you got a 580 credit score, I recommend you work a last lease ever program and improve your credit score while you're saving up for an optimal down payment. It's parallel planning, and that way you can see both options. And by the time you get there, you're going to have a better credit score and a better buying option. It's the same thing with co-buying. Can you and a buddy do it? Maybe. But have you explored what it would take for either one of you to do it on your own and buy your own home individually? Be sure you're not deciding that you can't do it on your own because you haven't even checked it out, or you're getting bad information, or you're talking to people that aren't qualified to help you because, that's the real estate industry. You want to make sure you know all of your options first before you get into something that can get really messy later. Because as you go on, you and a buddy, lives change. What are the odds that your lives are going to change at the exact same time? It's job promotion or want to move in with a partner. Chapters don't unfold the same for people. Okay, that was my little warning. Now let me get into the house hacking that I've seen for 20 years and that I do love, and is especially important in 2026 and 2027 as we get to our monthly payments are a little higher. This is totally underutilized, and it's a much better way for you to be able to control your own destiny as a buyer. One of my favorite house hacking stories comes from one of our unicorn realtors. Many, many years ago, he tells this story. I think it was in episode 315. He was in college, and he was like 19. And he and his buddies were renting a house, and the landlord called. He picked up and told him, hey, I'm selling the house. Well, Chris was like, well, can I buy it? And the dude says, sure, just if you got approved. So immediately Chris called his dad, who loved the idea. And at 19 years old, Chris bought this house that he was already slated to live in for the next 3 years. And the classic part, since Chris was the one in the house that was collecting everyone's rent checks, he never even told his roommates that he bought the home. He just kept collecting the rent check like normal. It's freaking genius. And this was sometime early 90s, I think. And he told me that since then, he's kept that house and he's used it to buy multiple different houses. And he's married now. And more, I think it was in the last 5 years or so, his wife pulled money from the house to fund her own business. So open your mind. Roommate house hacking, that is perfect for the person who already has roommates in place. Maybe you're the person that collects rent and pays the utilities. Cool. Here's what you do. Go buy a home. And then with the roommates chipping in, that monthly payment that you thought, oh my God, that's so unaffordable, I'm going to be house poor. Boom. Now it's affordable. Because the cost to buy, it's less than you think. And this is just me telling you what I know from 20 years of coaching first-time homebuyers. And right now, the information is not out there. That's just straight facts. The house hacking I love with roommates when you're young, that's the perfect time to house hack. Roommates are chill right now, and they're expected. They're part of the deal. You're never going to be more flexible than you are today. So capitalize on it and take that income. I know young buyers who, when they first reached out, they thought they could only afford a 2-bedroom home. But with coaching, they realized, hey, with a roommate, I could totally swing the mortgage on a 3-bedroom house. Could a parent be co-signing on the loan for them? That's a possibility, so they can get the approval for a 3-bedroom house. Or maybe they got an approval for a 3-bedroom house, but they stopped looking at it because the payment was too high on their own. Well, if that monthly payment's out of your comfort zone, where does it change to if you're bringing in 1 roommate or 2 roommates? With the coaching and the options, you can buy a home 5 to 7 years earlier than you ever dreamed. And because the mortgage is fixed and doesn't rise like rent, within a couple of years, you're going to be able to handle it solo and the roommates move out. And then you've basically upgraded your life without having to move with no stress. And I'm telling you, the only reason more people don't look at a co-signing from their parents or a stretch mortgage with the supplementation of a house hacking roommate, rent coming in and making it affordable, the only reason people don't look at this is because no one sat down and explained the options to them. There are tons of house hacks. You can rent a couch. You can rent a room. You can rent a garage, a basement. You can look for homes with ADUs. I know that there are first-time homebuyers. A lot of them don't even think it's in their wheelhouse, but you can explore a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex, and you can. We've got one episode, someone who's thinking about buying a single-family home, and then they realized that the duplex, the buying process was the exact same process because up to 4 units, you can use the same FHA loans, loan programs, even down payment assistance. And episode, was it 358? There was a 22 and a 23-year-old couple who bought a duplex with only $22,000 due at closing. They moved in and had a roommate, or not a roommate, they had a tenant on the other side. One of them had never even rented before. So she went from never renting to being a landlord. And again, this is just a tip. You don't have to do any of this. You can buy traditionally. But I love the fact that hearing this maybe opens your mind and might unlock affordability to you that you thought was 5 years away when it's actually perhaps right in front of you right now. And you got 5 extra years of home ownership. And that is a massive financial gain. Okay, tip number 8. This one, it's a little harsh, but it's kind of a reality. Change jobs for a higher salary. I don't make the rules, but buying a home, there's prices and interest rates that are going to change and tell you what you can afford. But the formula is always standard. It's based on your monthly income minus your monthly debts, your debt to income ratio. There's an I in DTI. Now, I want to give you guys an honest update for 2026 because the ground has kind of shifted when it comes to income. Because for years, the move was, well, you can job hop and most of the time you're going to get a big raise. That's not as true as it used to be in 2026. The pay bump for switching jobs, right now, it's the smallest on record going back to 2020. Job changers are seeing about a 6.4 annual pay growth versus a 4.5 for people who stay put. Bank of America says that gap is the smallest that they've seen in 7 years, way down from the almost 11-point gap that we saw in 2022. You guys remember it was called the Great Resignation? Well, companies, they're just not paying those same premiums to poach people away the way they were in 2022. So here's the 2026 recalibrated coaching for, hey, maybe change jobs and get a higher salary. I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow so you can make more money so you can buy the house. I'm saying go through the 10 steps starting at 500, hire a specialized team, and find out what you can afford on your current salary today. Get your starting line. Because if you find out that switching is slower and weaker than it used to be in your specific industry, then maybe the time that you need to figure out what to do is going to matter even more, just like your credit score. So you want to find out ASAP so you can start moving the puzzle pieces around. The earlier you know your number, the earlier you can make the smart moves that line up specifically for you and let time do the heavy lifting. If you really find out that, you know what, my income is just not going to get me there, great. Then you know today, early. And now you've got time to pursue something with different growth, and you've got runway to do it. The way things are going on in our economy right now, I understand there's a wage gap. It's a crisis. It's real. And trying to get the American dream, it takes more planning than it's used to. That's why I'm doing this, to lay out the new strategy that's working in the new economy. The thing is, wages haven't been able to keep up with the way home prices have been going up, but now wages are actually surpassing them. So you've got more strategies that can work for you, because the rents, they've been going up ridiculously, since the 80s, but definitely since 2000. So that means the equation to buy a home, it's changed. Knowing what your job affords you exactly today is going to help you decide. Maybe you figure out that you can get a smaller starter home on what you can afford right now, or maybe it's just going to open your mind to new options. The cool thing is, if you don't rent for a decade longer than you need to, which is my mistake that I did, you're going to have options later, which means if you decide to change your career in 10 years, 15 years, at least you've got that wonderful piece of financial stability that you're living in. Okay, tip number 9, side hustles. People pick up side hustles all the time if they're saving up for vacations or festivals or a concert or a new car. Why not side hustle for a home? There's all kinds of stuff: Uber, Lyft, delivery services, dog walking, babysitting. I know a lot of people that teach music or dance, or they do swim lessons. There's Etsy shops if you're creative like that. Tons of options. Where I live, I know some people that just pick up weekend shifts at Disneyland. They love responsible people with 9-to-5 jobs to do a seasonal type of employment. And there's a lot of that out there for you. There's also a la carte platforms. If you're one of those handy people, there's TaskRabbit, Thumbtack, Fiverr, and that doesn't mean exactly all hands-on stuff. That can be if you're really good at doing some other creative digital form of something. Put your time or your skills out there and see what happens. Maybe you can make some money. Now, I want to make sure I give you guys some pretty honest expectations about this, because I don't want to think that, your side hustle is going to be some golden ticket. The actual money that people make, the data's all over the map. What I have read is that 45% of Americans have a side hustle, and the average that people make is somewhere between $440 and $1,100 a month, depending on which survey you look at. But that average is misleading, because the top 10%, yeah, sure, they're pulling in $4,000 a month, but the bottom quarter, they're making under 300. Most people end up landing in, the low hundreds. So don't quit your job expecting riches. It's called a side hustle for a reason. And pick something that you're actually going to stick with, because the hidden bonus is that a lot of people that I know that have done this, when they picked a side hustle, something they actually enjoyed, they really doubled up on their savings, because now on their downtime, they were not only making money, but because they enjoyed the side hustle, they didn't feel like they had to go out after their side hustle. So they were making money and not going out as much because they were having fun doing that. It was a win-win. Okay, tip number 10, sell your shit. What did that minimalist guru say a few years ago? I forget her name. Does it spark joy? Getting rid of stuff is freeing, and it can open your mind to envision a bigger space when you buy a home, and then you can go ahead and fill that with more shit. And if you were ever a collector, check the market. Is it a good time to sell some of your collectibles? The internet's a gold mine if you've got a collection that people are wanting to buy right now. And tip number 11, reevaluate your transportation. I actually heard someone say, I went green to make some green. Okay, that's a little cheesy, but where I live in Southern California, it's not so easy. Pretty much everyone's got to have a car. But we actually tried this as a family and went to a one-car family for a little while and saved a little money, because you don't always have to drive everywhere. My boys, Joel and Matt from the How to Buy a Money podcast, I talked to them, years ago now, and they said that they got into biking to stay frugal and free up money for what they actually wanted to use the money for. And they discovered they really liked biking because it was boosting their mental and physical health too. So here's something you can do. Do your regular transportation the way you do it right now and keep a notebook with you, or do use your notes app on your phone. Document every single trip and then take a look at it. With a little planning, how many of those trips could have been done another way? Could it have been public transportation, or maybe even, an Uber or a Lyft? Maybe you could go down to one car. A car is quietly one of the most expensive things you own. Maybe you could figure out, hey, I can do public transit or an Uber or Lyft sometimes, and then keep this one car. And that way it's an opportunity for us to save money. It could be a massive financial win for your family. Most of the time, this does take a little bit of planning, but you might be surprised when you find out what public transportation is available to when you actually go out and research it for yourself. All right, what are we at now? 11 tips? Yeah, it's 11 tips down, and I've got 11 more to go. Plus this, I think I'm going to have a little more than 22, some bonuses in there. So make sure you're following the podcast so you get notified about every single episode. If you're enjoying this, please write us a quick review on Apple or Spotify. It's a huge help keeping us going to get the message out to more renters, because I have seen the end of this story tens of thousands of times. And you know what? You can do this.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers. So visit howtobuyaHome.com to get started.